Hello, guys. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley. Today we have, I was going to say a very special episode, but the fact that we're having to make this episode is actually quite horrible in all circumstances. But I wanted to put together a podcast that can sort of help us understand everything that's going on with the war in Ukraine at the moment. Obviously, it's still ongoing. It's still early days. A lot more can happen between now of even recording and releasing this podcast, but there's a lot going on right now that maybe is causing people anxiety. The kids might be a little bit scared. We're probably scared to talk about this with people because they might get too political, and you know how people get when they get political, it can kind of cause argument. I want to have a positive, as much as we can, of a positive conversation in how we can deal with things ourselves, what's going on. So joining me is Phill Morris, who you guys may know if you're fans of the biscuit. He's our photographer for a long time, been on the show a couple of times. He would stand there with a camera, and I remember speaking to Jasper, who's got the allotment in Beyond the Monkmoor, and I was kind of like, yo, shove a microphone in his face, and you get these impromptu little chats with Phill. But yes, he's here with us today. How are you, Phill? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back after such a time away. So thank you for having me.
No, it's good. It's good. It's nice to. I think these conversations are better as a freeway. And joining us again on the biscuit, this is a guy I've spoken to many times. If I need any sort of advice and these sort of things, this is the go-to guy, Dr. Phill Gittins, who we spoke to about peace building. It was about 18 months ago, I think. No, got to be more than that.
Was it? Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies, eh?
And you're joining us all the way from Bolivia, are you? In South America?
I am indeed. Yes, La Paz. Which in Spanish, La Paz is the peace. So it's an interesting place to be in the world for the work that we do here, for sure.
Fantastic. What are you working on down there? Or are you not allowed to say? Or what?
We're doing lots of peace projects here, training people, working with the communities, working with the university, the Chamber of Commerce, actually the UK Embassy as well. So we're doing a number of different things here.
Fantastic! You're doing great work, sir. I'm a huge admirer of what you do, because it's not an easy thing to do. We have discussed this before. In moments of sheer panic and like disorganization, to be able to go, okay, now guys, we need a level head, and these are the tools you're going to need to get through this. Is an incredible skill to have. And I imagine your phone, emails, and stuff has been going off the ringer since what happened in Ukraine, right?
What's happening in Ukraine and what's happened a long time ago, and the implications for the future as well. We've been very busy for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put this out there, by the way, before we get stuck into this. I am not designing this podcast to scare anybody. We're not going to talk about any conspiracies, and we're definitely not. I don't know. It's all political. Everything is politics, but we're trying to avoid the hard political side of things as much as we possibly can. This is all about language and how we can behave with all this. So first of all, Phill, Mark, I'm going to call it. So we've got Dr. Phill and we've got Phill. Okay, that's what we do. Phill, how have you been processing what's been going on in Ukraine? Has it been worrying you? Are you not bothered? I mean, how are you processing it all?
It's 50-50 really. I'm trying not to worry, but of course when it's on such a global scale, it could easily turn and start affecting us. But I think it's taking each day as it comes and just seeing how this develops and just doing what you can to support. I see there's a lot of places offering places to leave donations to send out there, which I think is fantastic. It shows the community coming together. I mean, we've just had the floods and obviously the pandemic, and things are still tight and difficult. To be able to come together and help somebody the other side of nearly the other side of the world is really inspiring. But it's just keeping a level head and just seeing how this progresses. Obviously, it's not directly affecting us. We're not fighting, but it's still tense. You just got to.
I think it's stories of the past, isn't it? With when it comes to like World War II, is like, I mean, we kind of didn't ignore what was going on in Europe for so long because we didn't have the resources to go into World War II. So we were kind of like, Chamberlain was kind of like, we'll just we'll send an expeditionary force. We know what happened to them. So, and then they started calling people up, and people that are up to the age of 40 now are kind of like, You just make these things up in your head. I've got to say though, Phill, your mic is kind of, I think it's switching from possibly the buds you're wearing and the laptop.
I tell you what, I will switch it to the computer and we will try again because these headphones aren't the best.
Yeah, it's fine. Hopefully it works. I've got to say, Dr. Phill, I am more concerned. I mean, in all honesty, I'm at that age now where I'm kind of like, I do care about myself, but if I have to go and do my thing, I have to go and do my thing. I'm concerned more about the kids. My 7-year-old turned to me in the car and he said, I don't want the war to be happening. And we don't talk about this in front of him, really. We kind of like trying to shield him away from it. Would you say me shielding it away from him and not talking about it can be damaging, or do you think I should possibly open up about it?
That's a really good question, Alex. Yeah, then let me think about that one. I think if young people are interested in these things, concerned about these things, then we have a duty to kind of explore them, but at that level, right? Mm-hmm. So even just for your son to come to you and say, I don't want the war, shows some kind of understanding of what's going on already, or hearing about these things. One of the things we need to be really aware of nowadays is that the internet is a wonderful thing. Look, we're connecting now, and we can connect from Bloivia, connect from the UK, but it's also a dangerous thing as well. And there's so much misinformation out there. So what we need to do is we need to get better at something called peace journalism. And what I mean by that is not this, there's a field called peace journalism about reporting the truth. The truth is the truth, and using evidence and facts to support our claims. You get on the internet nowadays, Facebook. Last year, everyone was an expert on COVID. Now everyone's an expert on Ukraine, on the humanitarian crisis. I will put it out there now. I am not an expert on Ukraine. I'm no way an expert on Russia. I'm just offering a perspective based on my interest, as you know, more broadly, is, which we might talk about, is something called the war system, which is what's happening in Ukraine and Russia right now is a symptom of a bigger issue, which I'm happy to talk about.
Yes, we can definitely get into that. And you're right. There's so much going on. I mean, okay. So I'm of two minds. Obviously, with the mainstream media news, I'm kind of taught. I've always been taught not to sort of take everything for granted that comes with the news, because some of it's garbage, some of it's factual, But even the big mainstream media have been calling out some of the fake videos and some of the fake pictures that were used years ago, which are terrible to see. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, this picture of a man crying because he's been defeated or something. I'm paraphrasing. It's not actually, but like if that is the case, that's a terrible thing. War shouldn't be happening anyway, but it is not relevant to what is going on in the Ukraine right now, right?
Yeah, and I think what you just touched on there is something really, really important, that we have an obligation. I'm not a parent, so hats off to you. But, as educators, as concerned human beings, we should be working with younger people and older people, which are sometimes more ingrained in their thinking than actually younger people. One of the good things about younger people is that they are kind of more open to changing their way of thinking, right? So this thing called critical thinking, to question things, even to question things that I'm saying, you're saying, Phil's saying, etc. That is such a really important kind of tool to help young people with, and schools have a role to play in this as well.
Yeah, and it is scary. It is scary because there's a lot of parents that are like, I always have a tablet. Go on, you can play on your tablet for a bit, right? We're quite careful. My wife has like an app on her phone, so she can see all of the apps he's downloading, and she can even deny them if he's trying to download something. So it's kind of creepy in a way, but you kind of have to have that nowadays, just to make sure we know where he's getting his things, because there's like a fake version of a game, and it's like a game that's not the original one, and some of the dialogue might be a bit scarier, or they might change things, or they might even have ads that aren't appropriate for him. So we have to make sure he's like looking at what we want him to look at. So I mean, there are also people that don't take as much security when it comes to kids playing with their devices and stuff. So they could be looking at anything on YouTube, getting their information from all kinds of dodgy places. Phill, have you seen anything that you maybe considered to be a bit sketchy on YouTube and what have you?
See, for me, I just want to pick up quickly on that, the peace journalism and how vitally important it is. You're saying about technology, the kids today on YouTube and on Facebook, they've got all of these devices. When I was 5, 9/11 happened. I was aware of it. I saw it on the TV because obviously my parents had it on and come home. And it happened when I was at school, so they were talking about it, the teachers, and but it never affected me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't watch the news. I didn't have a care in the world, really. Obviously, it was a major thing and it's terrible. Like, now I understand it. But I just went home and played on my Game Boy. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a tablet. I wasn't able to access all of this information and these news, But today, kids are so easily tapped into the internet and can see all of these things and false news. And it's really dangerous. But it's also great that they are picking up on it, and because they're the future, it's good that they're going to be educated at such an early age. Of course, it's terrible circumstances that they are being educated through this way, but it's also good because they're going to get a good understanding of the world and be able to hopefully change things when they grow up. But it is so dangerous of how easy it is to see fake information and just be passed down, and it spreads like wildfire. But it's obviously going to spread an element of fear through kids because it's their world. They're going to be the future taken over, and if there isn't one because of a nuclear fallout, which hopefully doesn't happen, and I'm sure it won't, but yeah, I can understand their fear. It's a very scary world.
Have you been coming across any of this? With how far has this reached as far as South America? Are people obviously worried about what's going on?
Yeah, it's really interesting that people are. For example, I wish I could show you now. I mean, can I show you now where I am?
Yeah, of course. Please do. Please do.
It is nice. So La Paz is where I am. It's called the Peace.
Wow.
And La Paz is 3,600 meters high, so it's known as rooftop to the world. So I'm actually on the 19th floor as well. And I don't know if you can see, but in the background, there's the big football stadium. I don't know if you can see that, but the other day there was massive kind of protests and awareness raising kind of campaigns related to what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. And I think, can I touch on something? I think Phil's right in terms of saying we're not directly impacted by what's going on, but I would question that all of us are in different ways impacted in terms of what's going on. And I think that's something really, really important for us to be aware of, because sometimes, as you know, I work in many different countries, different places. People think, well, it's not affecting me. And I think part of my role is to kind of help people think about, well, how might it be affecting us? We might not be getting bombs dropped where we are, but think about it. Today, and I know, Alex, you and I spoke about this on the last, we spend $2 trillion a year on preparing for war or wars itself. 2 trillion, right? Now, where all that money is put into the military industrial complex or militarization, different people call it different things. What does that mean? That means that money is diverted away from productive activities that we need right now, such as COVID mitigation, such as education, such as health. So that does indirectly kind of impact us, in this ways. And if you look around the world, like, for example, South America, where I spend a lot of my time, and I know, Alex, you have also been in South America as well, that there's a lot of poverty, in all places all around the world. The UN recently estimated, and through research and through evidence, that it would cost about 30 billion to end starvation on the planet, right? That's a fraction of what we're spending every single year.
That's Bezos' yacht, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think there's other research that says it would cost about 11 billion to give everybody on the planet clean access to drinking water, which of course water is the essence of life, right? So it makes you question, why are we spending all this money on kind of preparing for war? So I just wanted to kind of give a perspective on that in terms of how people might think about that they're impacted, by the so-called war system.
And it's something that has no purpose other than mowing people down. It's war. I know there's defense, that you got to defend your country, and you got to be like, my stick is bigger than your stick. Don't even think about it, that is what it is. That's what a deterrent is. But at the same time, nobody's asking for this war. Nobody wants this war to happen. Literally, the whole world, even Russia and stuff. I saw a post yesterday about a whole TV station all stood in front of the camera, all quit at the same time, held up a sign, said no war. They pressed play on Swan Lake and walked out. Nobody wants this war, and I think that makes it scarier, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's a lot of reporting, around the world in terms of people saying we don't want this war. And you touched on something earlier about, in the panic and where there's crisis. Where there's crisis, there's also an opportunity to change things, sometimes for the worse. And Phill, you spoke earlier about, 9/11. What happened straight after 9/11 was kind of probably, yeah, some bits might have been already in the preparation, if I'm honest. Okay. And what happened after was that you've seen a massive increase in military spending. You've seen a massive focus on, we need to defend ourselves. This is happening, which I think was very much over exaggerated. In fact, actually, the research shows it was very much exaggerated. So here's the point now that people need to be aware of, is that there's a crisis going on right now. People might start saying, look, we told you that we should have invested loads more in NATO. We told you that we should have, spent loads more money protecting ourselves. And then what happens off the back of that is that NATO get loads more money, which, by the way, right now is trying to happen, especially in the US, which are right at the forefront of this, where you've got senators and others that are lobbying to get more money to put into the Pentagon and into, the military industrial complex. So we have to be really aware of this, because it's factually incorrect that NATO has made us more safer. It's the reverse. If you think about why do we have the United Nations? The sole purpose why we have the United Nations, it was set up for this, to stop the scourge of war. That was the whole mandate of the United Nations. It still is today. So ask us, how are we doing on that? We've had more wars since, not world wars as in world, UK, Germany and allies, etc. But these proxy wars and civil wars, I think we need to question ourselves. How are we doing on that? And Phill, you spoke earlier about nuclear weapons. Of course, that's one of the two big existential threats that we're facing right now. Nuclear weapons, and the connection there with war is very easy to see. The other existential threat that we have is not COVID, it's the climate change crisis, right? But not a lot of people know why the climate change crisis is so interlinked with the war system. Not a lot of people know that the biggest polluter on the planet, bar none, is the US military. The biggest user of fossil fuels on the planet is the US military. Not a lot of people know that. They will talk about, we need to do things individually. And don't get me wrong, I do think we need to do things individually, recycle and things like this. That's a drop in the ocean compared to the big systems that we need to look at. And there's no bigger system than the Pentagon, the military, and things like this. From my perspective, actually, from research perspective, it's clearly laid out that if we want to look at addressing peacefully the climate crisis, we have to look at the big systems such as the war system.
I think things are starting to happen now with that kind of, even in Shrewsbury. I mean, like we just had a very, very bad flood in Shrewsbury. Phil's just up the road there from Colham. He was very much like in the face of it all. Every year, every couple of years at least, this happens. And then you get the people going, it's global warming. And then you get the people going, no, it's not. This has been happening since the Stone Age. Blah, blah, blah. But they're getting worse and more frequent. But now, I think this year, there's not been so much noise against global warming when it came to the floods in Shrewsbury and Shropshire, across Shropshire. So I feel like it's starting to affect now. The fires in California, there's that terrible tragedy in Australia that happened a couple of years ago. These things are happening more and more frequently. So we're getting a lot more evidence now that we can actually see. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like there is going to be a move towards. There's been a big push. I mean, with cars becoming more electric. I know it's not like the solution because they have these dangerous batteries that get buried in the earth, but like people are trying to make an effort. So hopefully we start moving in the right direction. But all of this war talk and the pictures we're seeing on the news, I mean, the news is just horrific now. They're not talking about you put on, go and do it now, guys. Pause this podcast. I'll wait. Go and put on BBC iPlayer, go on the news. They're not talking about what's going on in in your local area. They're not talking about the good things that locals are doing, communities are doing. It's just the war, literally just that, which is great if you want to know what's going on. But it's a scary thing that they're doing. So it almost makes you want to go and look for your facts elsewhere, because you're like, oh, I want to handpick what I want to look at as far as the war is concerned. So then you end up going down the rabbit hole, don't you? And so it's dangerous. I feel like when these things happen, the BBC need to go red button for the news in Ukraine, and then the rest of it's local news. Do you agree?
Yeah, is that one for Phill or for the other Phill or for myself?
Well, I'll ask Phill Morris just to see what do you think. Then we'll go to the expert after.
I agree, or they should create a separate channel for the war reporting. Like, as bad, it's really bad. I'm no good at creating names, but BBC War, I don't know, a channel like that specifically for this. Highlight it on the regular news, just in case someone's curious, just wants to tune in. When they do the recap of what's happened today, and then go and focus on a community group in Shrewsbury collecting resources to send out there. Focus on that. Focus on the good, because there's so much bad in the news. We've just had the pandemic. We want something good. The war can't be ignored. It's going to surround us everywhere. People are going to constantly talk about it. It's going to be in the newspapers. But yeah, we don't need it on our TVs. That's somewhere we watch to relax and a distraction from the world. We don't need to be turning the TV on.
It's got to be somewhere. If you want to find it, then you can go and find it. That's what I mean. Yeah,
exactly,
that's what we're saying.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah. But I want to go back on a point that you said about funding the war. Like NATO it's going to fund NATO. It's a catch-22. You're going to fund it and give NATO more money, but then that's going to incite war. It's going to make people want to go to war because they see other countries as a threat. Like, oh, they've just funded their nuclear weapons. We need to fund ours. And it's just going to build up, but everyone's too scared to use it. And it's just a waste of money. Like we spoke about the climate crisis. That is a lot of money that could go on repairing these poor people's businesses and homes in Shrewsbury that's just been affected by the floods. And I'm very passionate about this climate stuff because I've just started a university degree about environmental science. And one of the things that in my first assignment was talking about how species in a certain area are destroying life there, like plants and stuff, habitats that have been there for millions of years. But then there are other species being brought into certain areas where they so match extinct species that they're bringing stuff back that were there before humans existed. War's going to just completely wipe all of this out, and it's so unnecessary. We're going to lose so much. We need to focus on the bigger picture here.
Yeah, can I come in on that? Well, first of all, congratulations and all the best on that course, Phill. And if we would have been in contact earlier, I would have let you know we just finished a 6-week course with my day job, which was called, and you would have loved it, War in the Environment, a 6-week online course. And we had 150 people from all around the world on that course, from all different countries. The youngest that I know was in high school. The oldest that I know was 90. Etc. So, and we look at the things that you're talking about, because when we say the war system, what we mean is not just the bombs that are dropping and the fighting that's happening in Ukraine. We mean preparation for war, which often happens in global north countries, particularly US, UK, Germany, etc. And then something you just touched on then, the remnants of war. So after the bombs have dropped, after the nuclear weapons have dropped, what happens? And there's still legacies today with people, contamination and things like this. So you're spot on with what you said. With regards to the question, Alex, around reporting, I think it's a really interesting question. And we need to remember that we are part of to blame with this, right? Because people generally, I think it's wrong and it's not good. But people generally don't want. Let's go to Shrewsbury where it's peaceful today. That doesn't tend to happen, right? What people want to see is devastation, and it interests them. So yes, the media is to blame, but we are to blame also, because basically it's what's the demand and supply and demand. Yeah. It's supply and demand, so people will, let's go to La Paz where, this person is being peaceful. that doesn't kind of show news, and there's a lot of research that actually shows that, by the way. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that point as well, that we have a role to play in this as well, because we choose what to watch.
It's a very valid point, because it's probably me going, look, there's nothing here, and that's a view. They're getting views off me going, look, darling, look, yeah, I get it.
But I really love what you said. I think it's really true. We need to highlight the peaceful work that's taking place. So, for example, for those that are interested, 2 days ago, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, one of our board members at World Beyond War, that's the organization that I work for, is an expert in Ukraine, and he was on Democracy Now! And he had 18 minutes to talk on Democracy Now! About what's going on. You know what he spent his time talking about? He spent his time talking about we need to highlight more people that are doing civil resistance work and non-violence work. The issue is that Europe are wanting to send arms to people in Ukraine to basically support them. And he said, no, we don't need that. What we need right now is, and I know, Alex, you and I spoke about this on the last kind of program, to talk about the power of non-violence and how it works and how it's much more effective than violence. So if those that are interested, go on to Democracy Now! His name's Yuri. He's a World Beyond War board member, and it's a brilliant analysis. I will send you the link after. It's brilliant. He did an amazing job.
I feel like a chat with Putin privately, without cameras, like, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? What's the matter, mate? Like, let's talk this out. Like, seriously, what's bothering you? Maybe we can, I don't know, let's go to the cinema and watch Batman together. That's a shout out because Phil's giving me tickets to see tonight's Batman. So, but it's one of those things. You are right. Sometimes in these situations, even though the devastation is unforgivable, what's happening in Ukraine right now, sometimes the democratic response is more important, because, like I said, war is about, I've got a bigger stick than you. You get a bigger stick, they get a bigger stick. Well, I get a bigger stick, they get a bigger stick, and eventually you're going to want to hit someone with that stick. So that's essentially what's happened. What I wanted to talk to you about, though, Phil, is about some of the terminology that's used, some of the words that are used that maybe get mistaken. You see something like nuclear deterrent. You see nuclear deterrent on a thing. You go, oh my God, we're going to war. No. That's not what that means. It means they've got a nuke and they'll use it if they have to. They're not going to use it. These are the things that we kind of mistaken when we read these things. Do you do a bit of work on this? Is this something that you've come across?
Is this which Phil?
Dr. Phil, sorry.
Yeah, we do a lot. In fact, actually, on Monday we did a talk, kind of get together, which was called "Learn and Take Action About What's Going On in the Ukraine." And one of our speakers was the Nobel Peace Prize winner from ICANN, which does a lot of work in terms of nuclear weapons. Totally about what you're talking about. We've had a ban on nuclear weapons, and if you look into what's happening, the UK are wanting to spend more on the nuclear weapons, and they always use this kind of argument that it's a deterrent for other countries. Well, what happens? It's Phil, you touched on it. What happens when people are arming themselves with nuclear weapons is that we're always looking over our shoulder. We're always thinking, my stick's bigger than yours, or stick is bigger than yours. So we need to get away from that. And I love what you said there, Alex, about kind of, sometimes you just want to have a chat, because sometimes in war, right, what we try and do is kind of dehumanize other people. And that includes the so-called baddies or people that are doing things. The most difficult thing is for us to try and see the humanity in people and try and dialogue and try and understand different perspectives. Now, what's happening in Ukraine right now has a legacy. Before the Berlin Wall, after the Berlin Wall, agreements were made, etc. Some might argue that not all the agreements were stuck to, and that might have informed what Putin's doing now, etc. So to sit down and have a conversation and understand different people's perspectives is something that we can all do as human beings. So I know when you and I were chatting about this, and I've just wrote a few notes down in terms of, well, what can people do? We're sitting in Shrewsbury, we're sitting in Bloivia. What can we do right now, right? Well, I think there's a couple of things we can do. And with another hat, I'm working on these, so I've wrote them down. So when there's a crisis, there's usually kind of 3 or more ways of which you can respond. 1, respond to the immediate crisis. What's going on? The immediacy of the problem. 2, think of short-term kind of solutions. 3, think of long-term kind of strategies and solutions. So if you think about the crisis right now, people are concerned, people are confused, people are angry, people are, frustrated. So one idea is that, and there's people in Shrewsbury with expertise in this, offer kind of, you can call it different things, but, one way of thinking it, trauma healing spaces, psychologists, psychotherapists, counselors, people who are trained in facilitative dialogue to facilitate discussions around what's going on. That would be useful for young people, your son that has these questions, etc. That's one idea. Another one, perhaps in a more kind of short-term one, is some dialogues around issues related to war and peace. So people can get an understanding, and talk about these issues. Because I was on a call yesterday with Ethiopia, many people from Ethiopia, and they were saying, yes, it's terrible what's going in the Ukraine, but do you know what's going on in Ethiopia right now? And we've just been totally forgot about, So to have dialogues around these issues, and let's face it, not many schools don't prepare people to have these conversations. Universities, unless you study peace and conflict, don't really. So that's kind of
I know you've tried your part, Phill. You've tried. I know you.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the second thing. A longer term idea is this idea of something called peace education. So it's about training young people, training adults to understand what is peace, what is violence, to understand the root causes of war and things like this. Now, the good news is there is quite a bit of work starting to happen in this. There's something in the UK called Our Shared World, and it's a coalition which probably now has about 150 or 200 organizations all across the UK. If you type into the Google, you'll find we have a coalition website, etc. Our Shared World. And the mandate of Our Shared World is to lobby the government and to pass through kind of mandates, bills or resolutions that get schools, universities, colleges and communities to educate about or for sustainable development goal. So the sustainable development goals are the UN's goals, which every country should be working towards. There's one called Target 4.7, which is education for sustainability. So Phill, it'll be related to your area of environmental science and things like this. So there's a lot of work going on within the UK, and I'm part of that. I'm fortunate to be part of that. So that is a very promising kind of step forward, but it's just a start, So I think the longer term kind of strategy is to get peace education into schools, colleges, universities. Because if you think about it, I think I'm right in saying this, bar none, every single government in the world, every single member state, every single religion, I'm thinking Spanish also, has their own ideas of peace. They all speak about peace, all of them. Of course, and I often say this, and people like a bit confused when I say this. I said, even Hitler wanted peace. But the problem in his own way. Hitler wanted peace in his own way. So what we need to do is get, these kind of things into schools and colleges, talking about peace. How do we develop conflict resolution skills, et cetera, et cetera.
It's funny, isn't it, when you talk about things like you think about America, right? And America go, yeah, we want peace, and we'll enforce the peace because we're America, we're number one. Yeah. That's very provocative. That's not very peaceful at all. Yeah, you may say we want peace, but you're shooting pistols in the air and shouting yeehaw,
Well, it's kind of like what Phill said. Peace cannot be pursued by force, because it's kind of a win. You win, we lose. What we need to do, and we speak a lot about this all the time, is look at how do we pursue peace via peaceful means, and that's dialogue. That's non-violent activities. That's not through violence. That's not.
Phill, have you got any questions on this? Because I'm going to talk about community and the people around us. Have you got any more questions about this? Or any comments on that?
No, but just another point, like we're saying, you can't fight violence with more violence. And you were saying about the sending arms to Ukraine. I have to respect the Ukrainian president for stepping out of his office and actually joining in. But to go on national news and say we need weapons wasn't a smart move, in my opinion, because, you're just you're inviting more war by having weapons.
He's trying to offer bravado, isn't he? He's kind of like, we've got this. We need more arms, but
I know that they need ammo, they need defense, but Putin's not going to see it as that. He's going to be like, right, they've got more weapons, step it up. It's just not going to help anything. But respect him for getting involved.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because like I've been questioning myself these days, right? And these things we work on all the time, right? And we've been putting together a big statement and a big letter, to kind of look at this issue. And I even got in contact, and I'll share this with you, in confidence, with some of my colleagues that were in the military, and kind of, but they're now working in the peace field. And I said, look, we want to put a statement together, and it says something like, united against all war. We need to put an end to all military activity, whether it's preparing for war or actually fighting it, etc. And I sent it to some people, colleagues in the military, and I said, look, I'm going to put this forward as a suggestion. What do you think? And they said, I think people would probably agree with the idea of no wars, but I don't think people will fully agree with, and he was in the military, he said, I don't think people will agree with fully no military activity. And it got me thinking, and then what he said, Phill, he said, well, Phill, surely, okay, here's a question for you then. Do people have a right to defend themselves? And that was a really good question, right? And I thought about it, and then I went away, and I actually raised it. I'll share this with you. I actually raised it with both my executive director, who's been nominated several times for the Nobel Peace Prize, total authority on peace and war, my president, and things like this. And they had different perspectives. My response was this, that I don't know what I would do if I was in Ukraine. I don't know what I would do as if I was in Russia. I don't know. But all I can say is that we have science to fall back on. There's research that shows that non-violence, and I know, Alex, you and I spoke about this on the last kind of podcast, that non-violence is more effective in bringing about change. So there's a great book, if people are interested, which is called Why Civil Resistance Works. And they looked at all of the kind of social movements or political change kind of strategies from 1900 to 2006, over 300 different kind of movements. And of course, if you think in the past, before that, Gandhi always used to say, non-violence works, it's a philosophy. But there was no research to kind of show, well, does it work or not? This groundbreaking research shows that non-violence was twice as effective as violence. And the main reason for that is people power. You can mobilize and get so many more people behind you who want to work for peace and use non-violence in comparison to people that want to use violence. So we need to remember this, that, this idea of people power, that governments are there to serve us, not the other way around. So if we want to bring about change, we have a right to kind of protest and things like this and to kind of bring about change. But it's a really good question, in terms of, the president of Ukraine coming out. I think, on one hand, that is amazing, to see him doing that. And at the same time, my opinion doesn't count for nothing, right? But I would question that idea if we need more arms. Another way of putting it would be, we need good reporting here to show the effectiveness of the non-violence, both sides, Ukraine and Russia, because there's so many organizations, millions of people in Russia who are really against this, and that's the thing that people need to be aware of, this labeling that, Russia is this, Ukraine is this, be careful of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened for decades with Germany. People talk about Germans and they go, "Oh, Nazis!" They're not. That wasn't the case at all. The Nazis were a stand away thing from Germany, and they just captured the whole country. It's just one of those things, you can't group Nazis and Germany together because they were two different things. And the same with the Russian people. And you're talking about sort of people taking action non-violently. We are seeing across the world a cancel culture across the whole of Russia. They're seizing Russian businesses. I think it's the butter market in Shrewsbury is now stopping selling Russian vodka. I saw that. I was like, isn't that all vodka? There are so many things happening. Russian businesses are losing out. Elon Musk's turned on Starlink over Ukraine, but that's it. Like, there's so many businesses now being affected, and you can't. I get it. I totally understand it, but you can't help but feel for some of the companies that aren't multi-billionaires that are just starting up, and now they're being affected by the idiotic decisions that they're president. You got to feel for that,
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, support in your own way. You're entitled to your opinion, but like the butter market, for example, not selling the vodka.
By the way, I think it's the butter market. I don't know if it is actually.
No, you are right. I read it earlier, but
Shropshire's higher.
you know, they've paid for that. They're losing money just because they don't want to sell this Russian vodka to not support Russia. Okay, you're entitled to that opinion, but that business in Russia could not have. Their staff has probably got nothing to do with this. They've probably just been hit by a pandemic. They're struggling. They're going to lose out, and so many other businesses, and they have nothing to do with this war. They're just being, said, "Here's a gun, go." You've got no option.
It's happened before with America. They cut off Japan's oil supply, and what happened at Pearl Harbor. So do you feel like this global cancel culture on Russia and these petty little things? I'm sorry, butter market. I mean, this happened across the world, right? And like what Phil's saying, it's affecting business people that don't deserve that. Do you feel like this could cause actually an escalation in what's going on?
Is that for me or for Phil?
Dr. Phil, sorry.
I think I don't see the real kind of rationale in that, and of course you've got Chelsea, right? Wanting to sell Abramovich and things like this. It's going to hit everyday civilians in Russia more than the billionaires, etc. I think so. Yeah, I mean, I probably need to give a lot more thought to it, but first reaction is that I don't really see it, the rationale behind it all.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. We can't make these decisions, but I want to talk.
It's not just affecting Russia. A lot of these Ukrainians probably cross the border to go and work for these companies, or they've got offices in Ukraine. So it's not just, you're not just supporting Ukraine. You're probably affecting them massively. And like we were saying about the impact back here, I'm sure that they've got offices here. Some of these businesses that were stopping, like banks.
Well, they do. Shropshire Council has got a contract with a Russian gas firm, and they're trying to kill that contract.
It's affecting people's livelihoods here. So it is, like we were discussing earlier, like it's the other side of the planet. Nearly, it's not directly affecting us with the bombs over our head, but jobs and the economic effect is directly affecting all of us. So we've got to be aware of that.
Fuel prices have already shot up, haven't they, within a week of this happening? Are we okay to move? Because there is another aspect I want to talk about, and that is community. Okay, community and the people around us, because, like you said, Phil, this is affecting us indirectly, and sometimes you can find it hard to know where to turn. Last night I did a radio show, and I put a segment together that was called The Business of War, and it was all about the kind of music that comes from war. Talking about Rage Against the Machine and Sum 41, they did Still Waiting, and there are a few other songs out there. 99 Red Balloons, obviously a very famous song about nuclear holocaust. And I finished this show and I got really emotional. I was thinking, who can I talk to about this? Because you don't know who you're talking to. You could speak to someone. You can't throw a comment on, like, I don't know, a story about the Shropshire Star, because then you get people going, "Oh yeah, non-violence. That's big girls' blouse and all that sort of stuff." And then you get people. You say the wrong thing, and you get called, all kinds of. You don't know who to talk to about this. It causes anxiety. So how can we communicate with one another in a way that isn't going to make us feel bad? How do we get this off our chest, Dr. Phil?
I think that's great that you've been looking at that, the business of war. And here's one suggestion for you, Alex, that you might want to be interested in. And we've done it before with groups in the past, is that before we start kind of workshops and trainings, we put together a peace playlist. And so, for example, you can ask Phil, if you think of a peace song, what would the song be? And you can ask me, etc. There's one idea. In terms of the bit about, it's non-violence, it's fluffy peace and things like this. People need to remember that it's the action of non-violence. It's the power of non-violence. So it's physically doing something. So it takes courage to kind of do these things. I think another thing that makes me think about it, when I speak to people, is always the question, well, what can I do? That's the question that always comes up, right? And of course, if you just look at the work that we do, on a global level, how do we go against the Pentagon, or how do we address the war system? It's like overwhelming, right? And burns people out. So our answer is always that peace work and non-violence work and development work and environmental science work, etc., always has to be local. So you can make a difference at your local level. And these little bits of difference that you're making at the local level build up. So if you're asking yourself, people listening to this now, what can I do? Start local. If you look at Extinction Rebellion, for example, who I think are doing some great work, they have Extinction Rebellion Oswestry, Extinction Rebellion Shrewsbury, that do things in their own kind of context, to raise awareness in the actual community themselves, but with the idea of widening the sphere of influence.
Yeah, and it's always really funny to see the comment section on something that Extinction Rebellion have always done, because they'll all be like, "Whoa, well, what? How did they get there then? Did they walk or did they drive in on a cat?" They're missing the bigger picture. They're missing the bigger picture. Like, this isn't what they're going at. Is that whole global ecosystem they're trying to protect. It doesn't matter if they've driven there. They're trying to get them. If a tank of gas gets them to a position where they can now spread a message across the whole world, surely that's worth it, right? But yeah, Extinction Rebellion, I did have them on the show a while ago to talk about what they were doing, and I think it's good to have these conversations, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. I did an interview with Carol Baskin, and that caused so many
did you?
arguments. I did, because we just found her website, and she was like, "You can book a time," and my wife was like, "I'm just going to book the time. I don't know what's going to happen." And she appeared, and me and Tom Bruno, who works for me at USOC, we made the choice not to mention Tiger King once, but until the end. But we weren't going to be like, ask the questions everyone's dying to ask. We talked about conservation. And we talked about how things were going for her, but that caused so much decisiveness in the people around me. They're like, "Why would you speak to her?" So why wouldn't you have that conversation with someone, whether you agree with it or not? These are conversations that need to be had. This is why we're here today. We don't want to talk about war and the disgusting things that's going on, but we have to. I mean, we have to do it in an environment around us that we know are safe. And we can have positive. There's no point in joining a conversation with lots of negative people going, "Oh yeah, damn Russians," or "damn foreigners," or "they can't, asylum seekers." No way. You need to have healthy discussions about this, because one thing might be right, one thing may be wrong, but we need to talk about it healthily. So that's why we're doing today. How can we help though when it comes to things? I know, Phill, you're talking about there's lots of companies now sort of donating things to the Ukrainian troops or to the refugees, to Poland and stuff. How can we help individually, Dr. Phill? Yes. Okay. What can we do? What can we do to sort of help the war effort or the refugee effort that's coming in?
A couple of things. Yeah, so a couple of things like I spoke about, like you're doing now. You're providing a space to talk about the issues. There's like two things, right? One is support, what's happening in Ukraine right now, and that could be, donations, etc. That's kind of the immediacy, the crisis that needs to happen now, address the needs. But I think there's a bigger opportunity to raise awareness, to facilitate these kind of spaces, to have dialogue around, the tragedy of war and where did the root causes of this come from, and just to have discussions. I totally agree with you in kind of, one of the biggest challenges that we have within World Beyond War is that, try not always to sing to the choir, right? And try to have conversations with people that you don't agree with. And we've only managed to do it a couple of times at World Beyond War, and actually one recently where our executive director went up against and had a debate with a professor at West Point in the US, which is well known for military and things like this. And it was framed as a debate. Is there ever such thing as a just war, for example, was a framing question. It's a great debate, and it doesn't say yes or no. It's right. Let's hear from the professor at West Point, military background, etc., have his perspective. And then, our perspective, where we just completely you blew him out the water, but it's still an open kind of discussion, and a debate. So that's a really interesting kind of, opportunity to kind of have these dialogue spaces. You could do something in the square in Shrewsbury, you could speak to schools, colleges to kind of facilitate these discussions with their students, etc. There's some ideas.
There's a vigil tomorrow. Obviously, this is going after the fact, but there's a vigil going on in Town Square tomorrow at 2:30, I believe. I'm going to take a camera Phill, if you want to come for a walk with me into town tomorrow, that might be quite fun. But just to speak to some of the people and to hear some stories, just because I'm willing to, I like listening to these things because I think it's important. This is history, and we need to report this. I did make a joke on Facebook the other day about the BBC because they seem to be getting any Tom, Dick, and Harry that's got any sort of link to Ukraine on to talk about it, and I made a joke of. Is Tom from Chester and he's half Ukrainian on his mum's side. Let's talk about what's the peace talks going to. But then they spoke to a guy who's in Ukraine, refusing to leave, British guy with a Ukrainian wife, and he had actually really good insight as to what's going on. So I was kind of like, I got to eat my words a little bit now. But yeah, it's important to have these conversations. That's what I'm going to do on Saturday tomorrow. Yeah, I mean it's where do you know of any? Around Shropshire, I know you're in Bloivia right now, but around Shropshire, that where you can have healthy discussions about this without any fear of being lambasted or jumped on by certain factions.
No, and this might be something that you want to speak with, some of the great people in Shropshire that are doing work on the ground. Amanda Jones, might be someone interested in kind of working with you, Alex, and you, Phill, about kind of facilitating something around this. I think there's a real opportunity and a real need to do this right now. So, hats off to you if you pursue that. So Amanda Jones, and of course you've got, other, youth work people, Shropshire Youth Association, Shropshire County Council, you might want to have a conversation with and say, look, there's a real opportunity, real need here. We know that people are interested, concerned about this. We could offer to facilitate a space. Can we work in collaboration? And just some thoughts, But actually, your question it kind of highlights that no, there isn't. There's a real gap.
Yeah, and if there's somebody watching this, I'm sure this podcast might get quite a bit of attraction. But if you're watching this and you do have a service where people can come to you and speak to you, please get in touch with us because I'd like to highlight what you're doing, whether it's social media, whether it's meetup groups. If you're organising some of the vigils, I know this is the second vigil that's been going on. So if you are organising the vigils, I mean, I will speak to people tomorrow, but please get in touch with us because I want to continue having these conversations. One of the final things I want to talk about, and I'm sorry, Phill, if you wanted to add in there, but we're running short on time, is talking to the kids. You work with children, with schools and stuff, Dr. Phill. How do we talk to our children about what's going on?
That's a brilliant question. And the first thing I would do is listen, is ask questions. Okay, this is going on right now. I'm wondering what you're thinking. I'm wondering what you're feeling. Of course, be aware that, it could kind of trigger things, but spend a lot more time asking good questions and listening rather than kind of preaching, to them. For example, I can tell you now that, I don't know if people know, but the Quakers do a lot of great work around peace. And they're bringing out something called a Teach Pack, which is going to be for all schools across the UK. And I've put together 2 lessons, one on peace, one on violence, by the way, that'll be in schools and things like this. But they literally just reached out to me like 2 days ago and said, obviously Ukraine's happening. Can you put something together? And I said, well, I'm not an expert on Ukraine, but my, board of directors has just spoke on Democracy Now. Let me reach out to them and see if we can put something together. But basically, the idea of this Teach Pack is to be a resource for schools, colleges, community centres to talk about issues broadly related to peace. So within there, there's things like, what is peace? What is violence? What is non-violence? What is interfaith dialogue? What is civil resistance and things like this? To have conversations with young people about this. But then there's also implications that teachers are not trained in this. So they need to be prepared, to be good listeners, to be good facilitators, to not know all the answers. Because that's one of the things we always say. If you want to be a good peace educator, peace worker, like you're doing now, you're asking questions. You're not there as the universal truth. You're not there as the person that has all the answers. No one has all the answers. And we always need to remain humble. And I always like this idea of kind of thinking of ourselves as beginners. Because when we think of ourselves as beginners, it leaves us open to learning from other people. And wherever I am in the world, I hopefully spend a lot of time listening to people because I want to learn, So we can learn so much from young people. So it's not just about, what we can do for young people. It's what young people can do for us as well, because they generally more creative, generally more responsive and adaptive to change. Look at right now, I know we spoke about it, the climate crisis. young people are really active with regards to that, really, really, really active. And we can learn so much from that. They're not as active, young people, in the peace building and anti-war movement as what they are in the climate change, movement. So I'm just curious why that is.
I feel like I saw on Facebook, and Phil, you'll probably agree. The first time I saw it, I was kind of like, what is going on with people? I saw the memes about, the people making funny memes about what's going on in the world. And I was kind of like, this is ridiculous. The war's going on and these kids, they're making memes about that. I was kind of like, actually, we need to do this. It's really important, actually, because what did they do during World War II? They went in the church and they sang and they tried to have a good time and forget about it, because you need to be able to laugh in the face of danger, I believe. Yes, be understanding. Don't be too horrible with this sort of stuff, but you got to be able to try and get on with life. You can't keep being worried and scared about this, right?
I want to pick up on that point. You're talking about the kids sending memes. I don't know if either of you saw Ukraine's official Twitter account prior to this war. They weren't taking it seriously. They were posting memes themselves, joking about Russia. And it's sort of, you could say, invited this. They probably saw it. It's shared around the world, went viral. It hasn't helped the matters. But it's so easily done. It's just create a meme. They're so popular. But it is a dangerous, dangerous game that they...
Twitter is the root of all evil politically at the moment. Look what happened with Trump. Look how much trouble Donald Trump caused with Twitter. He got banned. He got banned from Twitter because he was so hateful. It's just nuts, isn't it? So yeah, I mean,
well, there's a good thing, and you might have another kind of discussion about that in the future, about free speech. To what extent can we have that? Because if you just have freedom for everybody, then they can write whatever they want to on Twitter.
Of course.
So I mean, that's a really interesting kind of discussion. Maybe to have another one, Alex and Phil. Another person discussing that.
Absolutely, but Dr. Phil, I love speaking to you anyway, regardless of what efforts we're trying to make with these kind of things. So how long are you in Bloivia for? Are you there for the foreseeable, or?
Well, there's a few things that we don't know. I know that I will be back in Europe for probably that. I have to come back to Austria and Portugal for kind of the end of May. And depending, I'm applying for a few kind of projects here. I don't know whether I'll come straight back to Bloivia or come back to England. So I don't know as yet. Let's see.
Well, if you're back in Shropshire, you best let me know so we can meet up and go for a coffee or a chat, But you're doing amazing work. Peace building it just sounds like it's such an amazing thing to be going out there doing, and spreading the good word of democracy and talking and being able to have these conversations that are difficult. So bravo to you, and thank you for today. Also, Mr. Morris, thank you so much for joining me today, because I know
it's been really interesting to hear from your point of view, Phil, and your perspective over there.
No, thank you to you too. And that hat goes off to both of you too also. Like we spoke about today, what can we do? We'll do things at the local level. You're doing things at the local level. I'm in Bloivia now, but I love Shropshire. I love in particular Oswestry. Love Shrewsbury as well. So hats off to you guys for doing this, for having this space, for having these conversations. So keep up the good work, both of you too.
Dr. Phil, where can people keep an eye on what you're up to over there and sort of follow anything you're attached to?
Well, World Beyond War is the organization, so if you put in Google World Beyond War, you can see everything that we're doing. I can send you, Alex, if you want to, the links for the Democracy Now! Analysis, which is brilliant, by the way. If people are interested, listen to that. It's 18 minutes worth of really great analysis. And we've got loads of kind of upcoming things related to Ukraine and, what's going on. So I can send you details if that's helpful as well.
Fantastic. I got to say as well, if you're listening to this and you are worried and you do feel like you've got no one to speak to about this, because I know there are genuinely people. It caused me playing that playlist last night on the radio. I was nearly in tears. I was kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe what's happening. I think music definitely is a very powerful conduit for that sort of stuff. But if you feel like you can't speak to anybody, like you can talk about these kind of things. And you need to be able to get these things off your chest, so try and find someone to speak. If you need to speak, whether it's the Samaritans, whether you need to see a counselor, whether you've got a friend that you can sort of converse about this with, just don't keep it in. That's what I'm trying to say, is don't keep it in. Yeah. Does that make sense? As a counsellor, do you think I said the right thing, Dr. Phill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay. Phill, you got one more thing to add? Can we get out of here?
Yeah. Can I just have a word with you, Dr. Phill, once we stop recording? Sorry. I just want to ask you a question. Something.
Yeah.
Right, brilliant. Well, what we'll do then is we'll get out of here because we're literally done an hour, which is fantastic. With great timekeeping, Whiteley. Well done. Right, guys, if you want to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with us via the website, which is the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast.co.uk. All of our content is available on there. You can go to the website, you can press play, and it will play all of our content. And that's made for us by our good friends at Web Orchard. If you need a podcast for something, whether you're in Shrewsbury or Bloivia, they will make a perfect website just for you. Whether you've got an Etsy account, whether you've got a podcast or a band or an events page, whatever it is, a business, Web Orchard will make the perfect website just for you. Dr. Phill, you are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to speak to you again. I'm very jealous of the view that's outside of your window right now because it's beautiful. Phill Morris, amazing guy. You'll see a lot more of him. He's coming with me. I'm going to drag him along to some of the festivals and things. I might even see if we can get him in some chainmail and some armor for the Battle of Shrewsbury. That'd be quite fun.
I'm all up for it. Yeah. As long as I get to stab someone, we're all good.
Stabby, Mr. Stabby. That's not peace building. That's not.
We will talk it out on the battlefield. It's not really a reenactment, but we've got to
nothing but a flesh wound. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in. Dr. Phill, stick around just for a couple more minutes and we'll have a chat after this. But peace out, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.